Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Clever Property Investing webinar with me, Neil Stewart. So I'm trying something that may work or may not work. I'm trying to do this so it's live streaming as well. And so I need to probably turn down my volume here because it's playing back to me. So hopefully everybody's seeing this okay. I wonder if there's anybody out there that's watching that can just put a hands up for me and to let me know that you can hear and see me okay before we get started. Ah, lovely. Okay, thank you. There's hands up there. Fabulous. All right, so let's just see if we can put hands down. Okay. All right, so on today's property investing webinar with Clever Property Investing, me, Neil Stewart, we are going to cover the following. Let's see. So I'm going to go through with you real life strategies that work and not get rich quick schemes. So one of the slides we're going to cover that, and I'm going to have a slide probably for each one of these and try and explain each one as we go. We're also going to look at clever tips to help you succeed with your property investing. So we'll make sure that you've got some great tips by the end of this session that actually help you succeed with your property investing journey. I'm going to give you some clever tips as well on how to avoid any mistakes or costly mistakes, things that might cost you money in the future, things that might cause you all sorts of problems going forward. So also we're going to look at buy to let or buy to sell. So there's two scenarios that you may be considering. You may be looking at buying a property to rent out and to let it out, or you may even be looking at buying the property to then sell on. So again, I'm going to look at that today and cover some points on all of that. Also, we're going to look at the numbers. It's very important that you know your numbers. If you can calculate the costs versus your income, etc., and if you don't do that correctly, you will lose money. And it's understanding how you're not going to lose money and understanding which one of those properties or which structures or which elements actually work best for you. So you need to understand how much that property is going to make for you, how much money you're going to make from that property. Is it worth doing? Isn't it worth doing? And if you're going to lose money, best to walk away from it. Also, we're going to look at bidder buying at auction today. That's one we've thrown in today just to talk about auctions. Auctions have been very, very popular during lockdown. Been a lot of online auctions, a lot of people going online, myself included. I've been looking at buying online in auctions and have looked at various auctions. So I'm going to cover a little bit about that. And in all of these sections, I'm going to give you some personal experience on things that have happened and how they've happened for me, and things that are going right or going wrong, or the best ways to deal with them. And finally, we'll have a Q&A if there's any questions and answers. There were some questions that came in pre us doing the webinar. So if I can find those, I'll answer those questions. If not, you'll have an opportunity to chat to me if you want to later on. And also, I'll tell you a little bit, just 5 minutes about our programs here at Clever Property Investing and what we do and how we can help you move forward if you want to get involved. If you don't, that's fine, but I'll just tell you a little bit about what we do. Okay, so this clicker's not working. There we go. All right, so most of you have probably already seen a bit about me. I don't want to go into myself into depth. If you want to, you can go and research me on the Clever Property Investing website, which is cleverpropertyinvesting.co.uk, and you can read all about me and find out about me. I will very briefly go through this. Some of you may have seen the page to register for the webinar with information about me already as well. A little bit about me very, very quickly is I basically, probably more importantly than anything else, I've been investing since 2004 in property. So what is that? That is 16, 17 years now investing in property. So I've got a fair bit of experience. I've been around when the crashes have happened. And of course, we're in another exciting or challenging period, depends on how you look at it. And other things I've done, I've been an advanced trainer. I've taught various strategies on courses and mentoring and coaching for over 8 years now. Once I got to my element or my level of property that I wanted to get to with the income that I wanted, etc., etc., I then decided to teach others and help others learn how to do it. And that's part of what I'm really doing here now and what I love to do. I am a multiple business owner. I do run a property meeting normally when we're live. We've been trying to cope with that, doing it on Zoom. So that's a property investors meeting, people that need help and support. I run, it's called Penn Wiltshire, and it's really aimed at supporting you guys. There's no sell there, there's no courses to sell to you or anything else like that. It's just come along, get some support, get some help, talk to other like-minded people, and ask questions if you need to, and hopefully have some kind of little nugget when you come away of that'll help you moving forward with your property investing journey. And finally, I'm a Prince's Trust mentor, which I love business mentoring. I have multiple businesses, and I also mentor youngsters through the Prince's Trust who want to set up their own businesses. So they've gone through the Prince's Trust. They're probably people that maybe didn't really enjoy school, didn't do so well at school, or just didn't enjoy it, have got circumstances that stop them from doing things they want to. The Prince's Trust help them. They give them various courses and help them develop various bits and bobs. And one of the things is they put them on a business course. At the end of the business course, when they've created their business model, they can then have a business mentor, which is where I come in. And we normally commit to these youngsters for up to 2 years. And it's exciting, it's good fun. And a lot of them don't realize that a business isn't a hobby. But that's another story. Okay, so point one today we were going to talk about real life strategies that work, not getting rich schemes. Nikki, is that preparing live stream on there? Is that showing preparing live stream? There's not. Yeah. Is that on there? Did it say preparing live stream on there? No. Okay. All right. Sorry, there was something come up on my screen. I just wanted to check that it wasn't annoying you guys out there. Okay, so real life strategies that work, not get rich schemes. So property is long term. If you're going to get involved in property and buy property, it is undoubtedly a long-term strategy. It's not a get rich quick scheme. It's not a, buy property and suddenly. I know in today's modern age, everything is instant. You can get next day delivery. You can get things delivered to your door straight away. You can buy something online. You can have it now. You can go to the shop. You get it now. Although with the current delivery drivers, that might not be so happening so quickly, but everything in our current age, you go on the phone, you can get it now. Things happen now. I want that to happen now. And people have got into this kind of situation where they think that everything works like that. Well, everything doesn't work like that. Real life strategies and real life property investment, holding property is for long-term gain if you're going to get involved. So here is a little bit of statistic that comes from Nationwide Building Society, who do lots and lots of work on the nationwide on property indexing. They look at how properties are performing, the percentage of properties. It's a great website if you ever want to go and have a look and research this. Go to the Nationwide Property Index website and have a look. And there's lots and lots of amazing information there. Percentage of increase in property, affordability, all these kind of things you can get on there. But this is one particular statistic that I've pulled out from their website. And this is showing you the increase in the average UK house price over the last 10 years. Now we can go further back, we can go longer, but this is the same curve, and it's the same, it's the same thing that happens every 10 years. 7 to 10 years, we're seeing this kind of scenario. And as you can see from that curve, you can see that a house bought in July, I've done July to July, so July 2011, it's about £170,000, the average UK house price. That same house now, 10 years on, July 2021, is worth 250,000, nearly 250,000. So that's more than double the initial purchase price. So this is the indication showing you that if you buy a property now, in 10 years' time, you're almost certainly going to be having an average increase of double that price. I have lots of properties along this line. One, for example, one really good one that I bought a house in 1999 for 105, and that property is now worth 400,000 pounds, sorry. So it's doubled and then doubled again almost. So it's doubled, it would have been 205, double again would be 410. So it's just short of doubling twice. So you can see, I mean, that's a more expensive property. Cheaper properties that I bought in my investment area are, for example, I bought for somewhere in the region of 40,000. They're now selling for 100 plus or 90 plus. And that is some 10 years ago as well. So it works. Even in the cheaper area, if you buy a property and you're looking at it on long term, It does work, and you do get the capital growth as we're looking at, and you do get things. So really, what we're talking about there is capital growth. So when I buy that property for 105, for example, I don't actually get that money back, or that profit, or what we call it, we don't realize, or realization of that actual profit until I sell it. So yes, it's equity, it's increased value, but it's on paper. So I don't physically have that money in my back pocket. So if I said to you, I've got this property, it's worth 400k, so it only cost me 100, I've not got 300,000 in my pocket. I've got 300,000 in that property, and I won't get that 300,000 until I sell it, or until I do something with it to realize that money. So what we tend to do as property investors is we're looking for, during that period, we want income generating. We want that property to generate us income while we're holding it for that 10 years. So our strategy might be to buy it and sell it. But at the moment, when we're looking at buying property, we want it to keep putting money in our pocket. We want that strategy where, you know, there's money coming into us all the time, and we can see anything from 200 to 500 pounds a month, maybe even more, depending on the strategy or the type of property we're buying. We want that income every single month, and the property is growing in the side. So the properties that I've had for 10, 15 years, they've constantly been generating income, and they've been going up in value. And until I decide to sell them, I'm not really going to get that money. So I really want that income. Hopefully I've explained that to you. Okay, so going to go through some clever tips now that will help you succeed. There are really sort of 3 ways to increase property. And when we're looking to buy a property, we're looking to buy it at the right price. Okay, we want to buy the right price. And there are 3 ways, once we've bought that, or to help us decide which property to buy, that are going to help us increase that value. Okay, there are the 3 ways one of them is distressed. So you may have heard people say distressed. We want to buy the property, and we want to buy the property ideally for anything between 20 and 30% below the fair market value. Fair market value or done up value are terms that we use, and you may have heard before. What's the property going to be worth at some point in the future when we've done all the work and we've made it really amazing? And we want to be trying to buy it for 20 or 30% below that. So for example, hard figures, if the property is going to be worth 100,000, eventually, I want to be buying it for anything from 70,000, round about that sort of mark, if I can. Okay, so I know I'm going to be able to pick up that property cheap and do some work to it and still make some money on it. Distressed really means rundown. It could be that the property's in a really bad way, and whoever's selling it can't afford to do anything with it, so they need to sell it quickly. It could be something that's gone to repossession. Repossession is where a bank has repossessed or taken back the property that it lent the money to. So when you take a mortgage out, for example, the bank will lend you some money against that property. The property is the security. If you fail to pay your monthly payments for the mortgage over a period of time and you don't pay them back, they can come along and say, right, you haven't paid us back your monthly amounts that you said you're going to, you've got into X number of arrears, might be 6 months, might be 12 months in arrears. And now where we've been chatting to you, you've not been communicating with us, whatever the process is, we are now going to take those properties back off you to pay back our loan and maybe recover some of the fees. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So they will grab that property back off you. Let's say, for example, the property has a mortgage of £75,000 on it, and you've been struggling to pay that mortgage, or the owner's been struggling to pay that mortgage. Haven't paid it. The bank's been trying to communicate with them, trying to help them. Banks will try and help as much as they possibly can. They will try and give you some kind of options normally in a normal circumstance, but banks can be quite mean. Some banks are not so great, and they'll jump in and they'll just say, right, that's it, you haven't paid. Terms and conditions say we can take the property off you. So they'll get the property back off you, and you've got maybe £75,000 owed on that property to the bank. The property may be worth £80,000, £90,000, something like that. they will tend to put that into an auction and sell it in the auction. And ideally, they want to get their money back at any costs. So they're looking to get their £75,000 back and maybe a few £1,000s of costs to repossess it and go to court and so on and so forth. So realistically, the property might be worth 80 or 90,000, but they're only looking to get 70, 75, maybe 76, maybe 78, something like that back. So they'll stick an auction and sell it for less than it's worth. So an investor will come along, and that's where we might come along and we might buy that property from an auction, or we might buy it as a repossession purchase through an agent. And then that person's paid off their debt. There is a scenario where perhaps they don't get as much back. And it's a common misconception that if the bank takes the property back, so I've heard people say, well, I'll just give the keys back to the bank, I can't afford the mortgage. And then that's me done of it. Well, that's not you done of it. If you owed £75,000 on the property, give the keys back to the property, to the bank, and the bank can only sell it for 60,000, then you still owe the bank £15,000, and that debt doesn't get cleared until you pay it off. So you're still in debt. So just be aware of that kind of thing. Other things for restress is people might need a quick sell. Scenarios where people might need a quick sell is somebody's maybe leaving the country. Maybe they've got a job somewhere else in another country, and they need to go quickly, and they need to get rid of this property because suddenly this job opportunity's come up and they've got to be there next month. Can you buy the property quickly? Can we sell it quickly? So they may reduce the price to get it sold quickly. And sometimes I bought a property from someone who actually doesn't need the money. Doesn't need the money, believe it or not, because they were selling the property. I put in a quite a low offer. The agent didn't think I'd ever get that money or that offer, and they accepted it. And we found out afterwards, why did they accept that offer? Well, they'd won a little bit of money on the lottery. And so not a massive amount, but enough to buy them another house, the dream home that they wanted. So what they got for this house, they didn't really care. They cleared the mortgage and had a little bit of profit, but they got enough money from the lottery to buy a new house, move on and buy some nice things and live happy. So there are scenarios where that may happen. Okay, so these are where we've got to buy the property. Now, ways to increase the actual property's value or the property's worth are that effectively you're gonna make the property better in some way. So how are you going to make that property better? Well, first of all, it is buying it cheap. So we're sort of distressed. So getting it cheap, getting it at the right price, making it better. How can we make it better? How can we make a property worth more effectively? Well, one is increase the distressed property. We're going to do it up and make it really nice. We could add another bedroom to it or another room to the property. If we take it from a 2 to a 3 bedroom or 3 to 4 bedroom, that naturally increases the value. Be careful when you do that you don't make it a silly small room that nobody can really use. But effectively, if you put a 2 bedroom to a 3 bedroom, you will get more money. And for example, there's one I bought recently. It's a 3 bedroom property. It's worth 250. The 2 bedroom property, which is the same shape and size that wasn't converted, is worth 220. So there's 30k difference in that particular area. So just by adding in a bedroom can make a big difference. Change the use could also be a way of making it worth more or making the property better. If you've bought a traditional 3 or 4 bedroom house, but you make it into, say, a HMO, you've suddenly got more income coming in for that property. Those of you who don't know, HMO is houses and multiple occupancy. You've got more money coming in for that property. You've got more people living in it, and it becomes a small business. So actually, instead of it generating, let's say, £600 a month rent, it's got 4 bedrooms rented out or 5 bedrooms rented out, each at £500 a month. Suddenly you're £2,000 to £2,500 a month income as opposed to 600. Now, when you look at the balance sheet and you look at the money coming in and out, any investor or anybody looking to invest in property will see it's kind of a little business. I'm going to buy that HMO and I know it's going to generate me this amount of profit every month, which is much more. So it's essentially worth more to buy. Other ways are things like commercial properties, which you might buy a commercial property, change it into residential, a lot of that happening at the moment, or even just buying something and chopping up commercial properties into smaller units makes them worth a bit more. And of course, we talked about natural growth, which is the capital growth that I mentioned to you at the beginning. This, the property is going to go up in value over 10 years, but that's a long time to wait for the property to go up. So those are the 3 areas that I wanted to talk about. That was distress, making the property a little bit better, and your natural growth. So those are the kind of 3 areas of making, little tips to help you succeed. with increasing the property value. How do you find these deals? So there's a massive question is, how do you find these deals? Well, I haven't got time today to go into finding those deals. One of the biggest things I do say to people is, you know, my main tip here is persistence. Just keep going and keep looking for the deals and keep going to those areas. You know, the people I teach and mentor, they know that persistence is the key. And sometimes it can be frustrating, and sometimes it can be annoying that you're going to go somewhere, you're not getting the deals, you're not getting the prices that you need to buy them for. All these kind of things can be very frustrating, very difficult, but persistence makes a difference. By keep going, keep going, keep going, and keep doing it all the time. I mean, I think thinking back to when I very started investing in property, I did 80 viewings of houses before I got my very first property bought. So the persistence got me there. But once I got that first one, it got the wheel rolling and things started to work much quicker. And I bought 4 very quickly after that. But that persistence of going all the time, every week, doing the viewings and checking and putting my offers in and going forward, made the difference to get me to where I needed to be. Okay, I can't go into today on this webinar how to find the deals. I'll give you a little bit of indication in a moment on the ideas of what to do, but it's quite a big subject, and that's the kind of thing we do, we teach and mentor. So clever tips to help you avoid mistakes. Well, the biggest thing you've got to do is your due diligence. Due diligence or research, it's the same thing. Research your area. You know, you need to know certain things. You need to know certain facts when you're looking in areas. We need to know what the properties are going to be worth. You know, so I've mentioned doing them up. So buying them in a bad way, doing them up. What are they going to be worth once they're done up? I've mentioned changing them to different types, like HMOs or commercial to residential. What's that going to be worth when it's done? Is it worth me doing that? I need to understand that. I need to understand and know what the rents are going to be in there for those types of properties. So if I've got a standard, straightforward buy-to-let, what kind of rents would I expect to get in that house in that area? What types of tenants would I get? You know, different tenants, different areas. If you go into certain parts of your town, you'll find a certain type of people live in that area. So if you go to the big places where there's big detached 4 or 5 bedroom houses, chances are those people are high earners. They're earning, you know, a good wage, and therefore they can afford bigger, better properties. You go to another part of your same town, and you might find the other end of the scale where you've got social housing, where you've got people who are on benefits or who are struggling. They have a job, but they just don't have enough money coming in. So benefits are helping them, and they're putting money into their accounts to help them pay for the rent and help them live in those areas. So you've got the whole spectrum there from one end to the other, and there's people along the way in the middle as well. You have things like sheltered accommodation. You need to know, if I bought a house in that street, in that area, would it work as a buy-to-let? Would it work as a HMO? Would it be a social housing? Would it be serviced accommodation? So serviced accommodation is the kind of thing we talk about as Airbnb. Could I make money of it as a commercial, lending it out to local businesses that might need something like that? Okay, and we need to be certain about this. We need to be as certain as we possibly can that we're going to buy that property, and that property is going to make us the money we need it to make. And these are the things, the research and the due diligence that you must do to make sure before you buy a property that all these things are there in place and the demand is there for that property. Don't let the agent influence the price. Now, agents, their jobs are to do the best for their customer, so the person who's selling the property. Their job isn't to help you. Their job is to sell the property for as much as they can. A lot of agents are on commission based. So the more they sell it for, the more money they get. So for example, an agent might get 10% commission. Well, the agent will get 1% commission on selling the property, but the actual person in the company who sold the property may get 10% of that profit. So for example, if a house is again on the market for 100,000 and the agent's fee is 1%, or 1.5% is typical, let's say 1.5%, the agent will get £1,500 when they've sold that property come into the company. Now, the actual person who sold the property, sometimes in the agent, will get a percentage of that. So he may get, or she may get 10% of that income. So they got 1,500 comes in, they get a bonus of £150 in their wage packet at the end of the month, or the end of the quarter, or the end of the year, however that agency works. So they're there for themselves and for the seller. It's like we like to think for the seller, but actually they're also helping themselves. So don't get pushed into paying more than you should. So the agent is going to try and push the price up. And I get asked a lot of the times, how do I know the agent's actually putting my offer forward in some cases? So I put my offer forward, and the agent comes back and says, nah, it's not been accepted. How do you know that they've actually put that offer forward and they're not just trying to bump the price up? Well, technically, they're supposed to put every offer forward that's ever put to them. Some do, some don't. And there are situations where the seller may say, look, don't come to me with anything below, if it's £100,000 property, anything below 90, I'm not interested. So if you put in an 85 offer, they won't put it forward. So they may have instructions to do that. Sometimes they won't put it forward because they're trying to build it up. So what you need to do is you need to build a relationship with that agent so that you can get them to help you within their criteria, within their rules and what's allowed, to help you as best you can. So for example, one of the agents I work with, they know my criteria. They know what I'm going to pay for properties in that area on that street. They know what I'm looking for. Let's say, for example, I've given them a good brief, I've had a good chat with them, and I've said, I only want to buy properties in that street and I'm only going to pay 70,000 for that property that I know is going to be worth 100, 110. Now he may get someone come in one day to sell their property. They need a quick sale. They're in that situation where I mentioned before, that he's stressed, they need to get rid of the property. It's a bit of a mess, it's a bit of a down, and they've said, look, I want rid of it. My mortgage is 65, I just need 70 to move on. So then if the agent and the relationship you have with the agent, he would then pick up the phone to me, this particular guy, say, Neil, I've got a property, just come on, we're not got it on the market yet. He wants 70 for it, fits everything you want to do, another quick look at it. And that would help you. Also, the agent might help you with a negotiation. Sometimes sellers put the property on for more than it actually should be on for. So the market dictates what a property should be on for. And if the market says that property is only worth £100,000 for sale, but that property may have been in the family for hundreds of years, passed down through relationships, or that particular family have grown up in it, their children have grown up there, their mother and father were there before, and everything else, and they're selling. So it's got a lot of personal value. It's got a lot of value to them, you know, emotionally, rather than actually what the market would pay for it. So they might genuinely think, well, it's worth more than that because it's a family home, it's somewhere we've grown up. I think it's worth 120. So they may ignore the agent's valuation. When the agent says you probably could sell it for 100, they may say, no, I want 120 for it because it's worth much more than that. It's my family home. So they may put it on the market at 120 against the agent's advice. Agent will list it because they want to list as many properties as they possibly can. Agent puts it on, you come along and you offer 80. Now, sometimes the agents I work with will encourage me to put lower offers in so that the seller gets an indication that they are too high. So you might work with the agent to get the agent to encourage the seller to bring the property prices down, and they may be able to help them also. So it's very important to get a good relationship with the agent, so that they can help you with the negotiation. Remember, they're always doing it for themselves and for the seller at the end of the day, but they do know what it should sell for. Make sure you're ready to buy. So don't lose a deal because you're not in a position and you're not ready to buy. For example, speak to a broker. Get yourself something called a DIP, or decision in principle. So that is where a broker will go to a mortgage provider, and you may be shopping in the region of up to, let's say, £100,000 purchase price. The mortgage broker can go to his preferred lender and say, look, I've got Mr. and Mrs. Smith. They are looking to buy investment properties up to £100,000. Can we do a decision in principle, which is basically them saying, yes, we're happy to lend you up to 75% of £100,000. So we will lend you up to £75,000 against any purchase that you want to buy. You can get that. That's either on an email or a bit of paper that says exactly that. So you can then go to whoever you're buying the property from, if it's from an agent, and say, look, I am good for the money. Here's a letter or a decision in principle that says I can proceed. I have been approved for a loan for £75,000. That makes a big difference. Now, if you and somebody else are going to buy a property and you both offer the same amount, and the other person hasn't proved that they're in a position to move forward, then who's going to get the deal? You're going to get the deal, because the agent you're buying through will go to the seller and say, you know, Neil's ready. He's got his proof of funds. I've seen his decision in principle. He's good to go. This will go smoothly. The other guy hasn't really come and produced anything that I've asked them for, so I don't know if they're actually going to be able to move forward. It shows you can move quickly. It shows you're ready to go, and it shows a level of professionalism. Remember, this is a business, and you need to be professional about it. And don't lose the deal. Now, the final point on this slide is do check the numbers and check them again. If you don't get the numbers and the due diligence right, it can cost you a lot of money. I was going to buy a property in Swindon some years ago, and I had done all the figures that I thought were right. I'd done all the due diligence for the area. What I was going to buy a property, and I was going to turn it to HMO. Done all the work, and I kind of worked out, yeah, I can get this rent for this, demand for it, etc., etc., etc. But then when I stepped back, and my mentor at the time turned around to me and looked at something in the way that I didn't look at it at the time, and said, if you buy that property, you're going to lose £20,000. And he very quickly pointed out to me, this is why. And you know, it very quickly made sense to me. There was something I'd overlooked, and I hadn't done my numbers, hadn't double checked, and hadn't looked at that little idiosyncrasy that was there, the one thing that would make a difference. So make sure you do your numbers, make sure you get them checked, make sure, you know, if you're going to be in an area you've not been before, maybe there's somebody in that area that's got experience in that area that can maybe help you, maybe assist you in some way. Okay. So buy to let or buy to sell. So effectively, buy to sell, flip, or keep. Buy to let. So do we want to flip the property? Do we want to keep it for long term, as we mentioned? Now, some investors have a particular strategy. They just don't like renting. They don't like long term. They don't like tenants. They don't like keeping the property, keeping it maintained. They just want to be in and out, bang, and that's their strategy. They just buy, do them up and sell them, buy, do them up and sell them. And that's all they do. So realistically, there's figures that would be acceptable. So if you're going to do all that work, you need to think about how much money would you be prepared to take as a profit for that. And I would suggest, certainly for me, that 15%, £15,000 is probably a kind of a figure that you want to aim for. So if you're going to buy a property, you're going to do it up and you're going to sell it, you want to be making £15,000 profit before your costs, before your bills. Otherwise, you're kind of doing a lot of work for not really a huge amount of gain at the end. And, you know, if you flipped, how much would you like to make? Let's say, for example, you make £15,000 on one property. If you did 2 a year, then you would be making something like £30,000 per year. But you would have to do 2 a year. You'd have to do 2 every year, and you'd have to keep doing that every year to make sure you've got that income, that 30k coming in. If that's what you wanted to do, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. You don't want tenants. I can totally see the benefit for some people doing that. It's very clean and precise. You buy, you do up, you sell, move on, find the next one. Buy, do up, sell, and so on. You might have 2 on the go at the same time if you're lucky. In the current market, that's quite difficult to do. Flipping is quite difficult at the moment to find really good deals that's going to make you that kind of money. It's not that they're not out there, but getting 2 in a year is going to be hard work, and that's where the persistence comes in. You can do it. However, if you keep, how much will you make over a period of time? So let's say you buy the property, you brought that fridge, you buy it, you could sell it for £15,000 profit. That's fair enough. But what if you keep a property? What if you keep the property and it makes you £300 a month? So after all your costs and all your bills and everything else, you make £300 a month. That's potentially £3,600 a year. 5 years of holding that property would make you £18,000 over 5 years. In 10 years, you'd be making something like £36,000. What if you bought 10 of those? If you bought 10 properties that were generating you £300 a month, you're suddenly earning £3,000 a month, which is then suddenly £36,000 a year. So 10 properties could do the same as flipping 2 properties over a year. and they will always be putting that money into your pocket as long as you maintain them and as long as you keep them in a good state and you've done all your due diligence, got the right property in the right area. That property is going to keep earning you money forever. You will also benefit from the capital growth, of course, in that, you know, as you're taking in the income and as you're getting that income, the property is going up in value. So in 10 years' time, it'll be worth more as well. Excuse me. So yeah, so you'll benefit from the capital growth. Know your numbers. So numbers, if you don't calculate the numbers and you don't know how to do it properly, it can be very, very dangerous for you. You must do this and you must do this correctly. You must understand. There are two figures or two terms that are used quite a lot within property investing, property purchasing, and that's yield and ROI. Okay. Yield is used an awful lot by lettings, sales agents all the time. They'll always tell you. Now I'm going to try and do something clever on this screen. I'm going to try and explain to you, we'll do some figures for you and show you how to calculate the yield and how to calculate the ROI, which is return on investment. The return on investment is how much it's earning you against the money that you've put into the property. So yield and ROI, the two important figures here. I'm going to see if I can share my screen here and get this to work. And I've got a little app here that allows me to write on the screen. Let's see if we can get it to work. Where's it gone? So let's see if we can bring that up in a second. Where's my screen sharing? Can we see that? Can someone just put their hand up if they can see that screen? Okay, it's a bit blurry at the moment. It's coming up there, isn't it? Okay. Good. All right. So thank you. Thank you. Screen telling me. Okay. So I'm going to do a little calculation here. So for first of all, the yield. So the yield is actually just gross figure. So those of you that have businesses or those of you that actually buy and sell things, you realize gross doesn't include how much it costs you to buy it, doesn't include you how much outgoings are or anything else like that. It's just the actual overriding figures. So let's say, for example, this particular property we're talking about costs £100,000 to buy. So £100,000 to buy. Okay. And I'm going to get, of that £100,000, I'm going to get £650 a month rent. In rent. Okay. So whenever we work in yield and return on investments, we are looking at annual figures. So the rent, I want to know what the annual rent is really. So that's going to be 650 times 12. 650 times 12 months is actually, so the annual figure, my annual rent is £7,800 per year. Okay. So I've got the two figures that are important here, what it's going to cost me to buy and what it's going to generate me every year. And those are the figures we look at when we're doing our yield calculation. Our yield calculation is effectively our annual rent divided by our purchase price and then times it by 100. So this is a very easy figure here, isn't it? So 7,800 divided by 100,000 times it by 100 actually comes in at 7, and it's equated in a percentage, 7.8% yield. So when an agent's talking to us about yield, they're saying, if you bought this property for 100,000, you'll get £650 a month. So the yield is 7.8%. So whenever you go to an agent and an agent says to you it's a yield, what yield are you looking for is one of the questions a lot of them ask for. You might decide on that figure. Now, to us as an investor, it doesn't mean an awful lot. It gives us an indication. It's an indication of what we're looking for. That's fine. But in reality, it really doesn't matter too much because there are costs. There's a mortgages if we buy mortgages, the cost of borrowing the money. There's solicitors' fees. There's agents' fees. There's all these kind of things involved in it. So it doesn't really give us a true picture. But if an agent was to say to you, what kind of yield are you looking for? I would always try and say, looking for double figures. I'm looking for 10% or better. Okay. So let's have a look at the return on investment calculation. So we'll take the same property. So the same property now, what we're looking with this is we're looking at what's it going to be worth. Remember I said fair market value or done up value at the end of the time when we've done all the work to it. So this is our done up value, £100,000. Now I know I'm gonna get 75% lending on this. So most mortgage companies now will give you on a buy to let 75% against to borrow the property. So I'll get £75,000 of a mortgage on this property. Okay, not a problem. So that's money coming from the bank. I would need to find the rest. So the 25% that's left is money that I would have to find for my deposit. So my deposit money would be £25,000. Okay, so that's my deposit. Right, so I now also know that this property is going to generate me a certain amount of income, £650 a month, we said. So the rent is going to be £655 a month. Okay. We'll come to that in a minute. It's also going to cost me a little bit to buy the property. So I may have some solicitor's fees. I'm just using some ballpark figures here. Sometimes it's cheaper, sometimes it's more. So my solicitor's fees, and I put into that as well what a broker would cost me, is around about £2,000. So that's my solicitors and a mortgage broker's fee there. So I'll pay my broker because my broker is going to find me the best deal for me. Always use a good broker. I may have, on this particular thing, there is, well, it depends on where you're investing, whether it's England, Scotland or Wales, you will have some stamp duty to pay, depending on whether it's your first or second property as well. So in this case, I'm suggesting it's my second property. I'm buying in England and the stamp duty of a purchase price in England is 3%. So I've got 3% of the 100,000, so that is £3,000. Stamp duty. And I may have to do a little bit of work to this property. Let's say, for argument's sake, again, I'm going to do a lot of little bits in there. I'm going to do a fair amount of work, and it's going to cost me £10,000 to do that. Okay, this is my refurb costs. Refurb. So in total, for me to buy this property, I've got to find this money, 25k. I've got to find 2k, 3k, and 10k. So in total, I've got to find 35. Is that right? 35, £40,000. Yeah, £40,000. So let's just remember that figure. I need £40,000 to buy this deal. All right. The second part of it now. Now I'm going to need to work out what the mortgage is going to cost me in this property. I know I'm going to get rent for £650. Here's my rent. My mortgage is going to be now worth, some of the bad rates at the moment are about 4%. So I was going to get £75,000 mortgage at 4%. Okay, so that is £75,000 at 4%. And I want to know what that is monthly. Monthly, that is going to be £250. It's my mortgage. Okay, I won't go, for those of you that need work with the calculations, we'll help you with that another time. I'm going to have to rent this out through an agent. I don't want to do it myself. Some of you may have your own agencies and you do it yourself, but I'm going through an agent, and agents would charge anything from 8 to 12%. So I'm going to go for the worst case here. I'm going to charge my agency, or an agency that I'm going to use, it's going to charge me 12%. And that's 12% of the rent. So the 650 times 650. So an agent's going to charge me £78 a month to manage this property for me. Yeah. And I also like to put some money aside towards any maintenance, any insurances, anything else like that, any management or maintenance issues. So we have a little maintenance fund, which we put that as mate. And we try to put 10% per property into a separate account. In case something happens and I don't have the funds for it, I don't have somewhere to put it. So 10% of our rent is £65. So now we need, now we need to go, this will give us our profit or our cash flow each month. So we've got £650 rent. We're going to take away 250 of that as a mortgage. We're going to take away £78 for our agent's fees, and we're going to take away £65 into our maintenance fee. So we're actually going to make from this property, when we rent it out, £257 per month cash flow. I want to know what that is a year. Remember when I said about doing the figures? We do everything when we're doing return on investment or yield, we're looking at annuals, so figures. So I need to know what that is a year. So we times it by 12 because it's 12 months in a year. So my annual rent is 3,084. My annual rent, or annual cash flow. Okay. So we've got some figures there. We've got the cash flow, which is that. On the previous screen, we've also got 40k of costs. So now we take those two figures, and what we do is we do this on the 3084. 3084 divided by the money it's cost me to buy it, or the money in the deal, and we times that by 100 to give us a percentage. So divided by 40 times by 100. That comes in at 7.71% ROI. ROI, so return on investment. So that figure there effectively tells me how hard my money is working. So my £40,000 in that property is generating me, after costs and after a little bit on the side for the maintenance in case something goes wrong, it's generating me realistic terms of 7.71%, which you could think of as an interest rate. Let's say if I put my £40,000 in a bank right now, what interest will I get on my bank? Probably 1% if I'm lucky. So I might make 1% a year on that money. If I put that £40,000 into the property, this particular property, I'm not saying this is a figure that I would accept, but in this particular property, it's 7.7% on that money per year. So my money's working much harder in this property for me than it is sat over here. Hopefully everybody understands that. Let's see if we can get the yeah. Cool. Okay, good. So that's what I'm talking about. Hopefully that's reasonably clear. I'm trying to do it as easily as possible with the figures, because I know some people will be great with figures, some people won't be so great with figures. So the yield calculation I've done and the return on investment calculation I've done. Both figures that are used widely in property. Yield calculations more so used in estate agents, that kind of thing. ROI is what we're looking for as an investor. So if we're happy with those figures, we can go forward. If we want a better return on money, we would look to negotiate more to get a better ROI, to get a cheaper price, maybe not so much work on it, all those kind of things we've got to try and think about. Okay, so buying at auction. Hopefully that's kind of the numbers are covered. We've got no questions coming in there. So again, if there's lots of questions, I'm sure we can try and answer those for you as well. So buying at auction. There are lots and lots and lots of auctions out there at the moment, loads and loads and loads of them. In particular, there are some really big ones in London, some big players in Wales, in the north of Scotland. And the big auction houses, people like Allsops or Barnard Marcus, are based in London, and they have every couple of months hundreds and hundreds of lots in their auctions. They're still doing them online at the moment, so you can go online and you can bid online virtually and apply for them. Now, one of the things you must always do if you are going to buy at auction, saying you should or you shouldn't, but it might be right for you. Should you buy at auction? I certainly have bought at auction and still do continue to buy at auction if I need to, or if I can find a deal, is always view the property. Don't know how many of you have probably seen Homes Under the Hammer multiple times now, and every now and again, Martin Roberts or one of the guys on there comes up to somebody and they've actually not viewed the property. Now, the reality is that program shows you all the good stuff that happens. There's a lot of stuff that goes wrong they don't show you. So there are lots of people that buy at auction. I've gone to view properties in areas where something's been bought at auction by someone. Let's say, for example, in fact, this actually happened, is I went to look at a property up north in Hull. And the property had been bought at auction by somebody in London who had, as we're looking at it, we saw about £40,000 there. It was cheaper than that. It was something like £25,000 to buy this property. Yes, you can buy properties for £25,000 in auction. But they bought it because they thought, you know, at £25,000, it's going to rent for £500–600 a month. That's a great return on my money. But they never viewed it, never looked at it. So they bought it at £25,000. And when I went to view it up there in Hull, the windows were smashed in, they were boarded up. There was, everything had been stolen from inside that was anything worth taking, like copper pipes, things like that, boilers, that kind of stuff was all taken out. The person who bought it had not viewed it, didn't know that the area that he bought that in was a particularly rough area. It was an area that was full of drugs and drug sellers and people that were on drugs and would take anything they possibly could to get to sell to buy their next fix in the drugs. And the area just was horrible and horrible. It was, as I looked around it, there's just no way that I would have bought that property in any circumstances. It could have been £1, but I still wouldn't have bought it because it just wouldn't rent. Somebody turned up there to look at it. Again, this is about due diligence. The due diligence we did before would say to me, you don't buy that property because it's not worth buying. So this guy had bought it from London thinking 25k, no brainer, I'll make money all day long, but he didn't. He actually had to put it back in auction to try and sell it again. And I don't think it's sold, it's still hanging around. So he's got £25,000 in a property that's getting trashed constantly. It's boarded up and he can't do anything with it. So he's actually earning him nothing. So always view the property before you decide to bid at auction. One of the tips there about buying at auction that I would say, a clever tip, is that the bigger auctions like the ones in London, the properties you're probably looking for are the ones that are out of area. Less so now that it's online with Zoom and all these kind of remote online bidding and things. So you would probably have looked at the auction if it was a manual when you turn up to it, and you'd say, well, that property's in my area that I invest, maybe it's Hull, and I've looked at it, but it's in an auction in London. Now, when they're just actually physical turn up to bid for things, how many people are actually looking to buy in Hull when the properties, majority of the properties are all based in London, they're in that auction. So there's more chance of you getting a reasonable price on that property or maybe getting a good deal. So bear that in mind. It's out of auction, out of area. The auction's based in London, but the properties aren't in the north. Next tip. Can you offer before the auction? Well, yes, you can. You've viewed the property, you've had a look at it, you've done your figures, you've done your calculations, you've realized that that property is going to make me a great return on my investment. If I buy that property, I'm going to be making 20–30% return on investment, and that is possible. You can do that. And that's the kind of thing we do day in, day out. That's the kind of thing we teach and we mentor. Then you can put an offer forward on that property before the auction. So pre-offer, pre-auction offer. The property's on the market, it's in the auction, the guide price is there, you know what you could buy it for. You can go to the auctioneer and say, look, I've looked at the property, I think I'd like to pay whatever it is that you want to pay for it to the auctioneer. Now, there's two ways that can go. The auctioneer could say no, and they could put the offer forward. Now, what are the reasons they do that? One of the reasons is if the property is in the auction and it's not getting much interest, it's in an area like the one I said in Hull that's been smashed over. Nobody's interested in it. It's maybe had one person look at it, and it's been available to look at for the last 2 months. So the auctioneer may say, do you know what, Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, this property is not getting any interest, but you've got one person who's come along and offered to buy it for this price. It might be slightly less than the asking price, what you want, but I think it's a good idea for you to sell it to them. So they would sell it to that person because of that reason. However, the other side of the coin is that the property's had so much interest. You know, you're queuing up. How many times have you guys now, if those of you who've done anything before, have gone to an auction property and there's about 15, 20 people all waited to go in the property, all queued up. And there's so much interest in it that actually when you put an offer forward, the auctioneer was saying, no, actually we're getting so much interest, we think we're going to get a much better price by putting it in the auction. So they may say no. So you can put a pre-auction offer in. It's not a problem, not a problem at all. And remember to stick to your numbers if you go to the auction. Do the numbers and stick to them. Whatever you do, do not get into auction fever, because the auctioneer is very good at trying to get the prices up. Again, remember, the auctioneer is essentially an estate agent and he's there to make as much money as he possibly can for him and his clients. He's going to get commission on what he sells. The client's going to get more money for whatever they can get. So if he can get you bidding and get your egos going and saying, oh, I want to beat that person who's bidding against me, he's going to get more money. You're going to end up buying something that doesn't generate you the income that you wanted it to, doesn't give you the return on investment that you wanted to. So bear that in mind. Do the numbers and stick to them. It's always, always clever. What happens if the property doesn't sell at auction? What happens if the property doesn't go? So at auctions, there's always a guide price and something called a reserve price. So the guide price is, auctioneers are supposed to follow a code of conduct that the guide price is 10% here or there to what the actual reserve price is. So reserve price is the price. I put a property to auction, the auctioneer will say to me, how much do you want for it? So I might say the figure, I might say, look, I want £100,000 for it. So that's the reserve price, and that's not published anywhere. Nobody gets told that. So the auctioneer might say, well, do you know what, we'll put the guide price at 90,000. Because it's a good property, people will come and look at it interested, and hopefully we'll get 100,000 or even more in the bidding process. But you don't know what the reserve price is. So when he goes to auction, if somebody's gone in there and they've started bidding, it never reached that 100,000, that reserve price, the auctioneer can't sell it. He has to say, I'm sorry, you can't sell it. Now, what you can do at that point is you can go to the auctioneer afterwards and say, what's the reserve price? You know, I bid 90, I'm happy to pay 90 for it. Am I very far from what the actual owner wants for it? And he might say, well, the owner wants 100,000. At that point, he might be able to say that. And you might say, well, I can't do 100,000. I could do 95. How about that? You go to the seller, and the seller will say, yeah, fine, happy with 95. That's okay. Or no, I'm going to put it in the next auction, or so on and so forth. So you can always go in afterwards if it doesn't sell and ask the question, you know, what do they actually need for it? And it may be miles away from what you can pay for it, so you can't do it, but it might be on the. There was one property that I looked at in auction a little while ago, and it was got to £64,000 in the bidding, and then didn't sell. So that was as high as it went. £64,000 when anyone was prepared to pay for it. Auctioneer said, I can't sell it. So I phoned him up and said, well, what are they looking for? And he said 65. They were holding out for £1,000 more. So I bought it for 65. Happens. It does happen. Sometimes people like that. Some organisations, if it's being sold by an organisation, may have a criteria that they must get a certain amount for it. Okay, brilliant. Okay, so that is the okay, live auctions. Learn the little tricks. Okay, live auctions. There, if you go physically to an auction, it's great fun. It's great. There's lots of things you can do. There's lots of little clever tips that the auctioneer does to try and raise the price up, and we can kind of give you indications of what they're doing and little clever things they're doing, and how they're trying to get it up. But if you get a chance to go to a live auction, go to a live auction and just watch. Don't bid on anything, or you might want to be interested. I used to go to live auctions all the time. I used to get the catalogue and I used to make a note of what things sold for. So if something's in the guide price, I'd write down, you know, and so I'd get an indication of what things are selling for. Again, it's a bit of due diligence. So in the area I'm interested in, I'm seeing what things are actually selling for in the condition. And I've just got a few slides for you just to show you kind of an example of one that I did buy. And then actually this one was a flip and I put it into auction. So I bought this property in this condition, in this beautiful, beautiful condition this property was in. This is actually how they left it. So crisp packets, Coke cans, who knows what else lying around, bags of rubbish there. There was even school books. I don't know if you can see it. There's school books there, left there, photographs, all sorts of rubbish. The garden was a mess. It was a total state. There's more pictures there. The bedroom was full of stuff. The living room was still full of furniture. All of this was just left there as it is. There's another bedroom, and there was just stuff everywhere, just absolutely stuff everywhere. It was a real mess. Needless to say, I managed to get it for a good price. I got it cleaned up. With this one, all I did was get it cleared out. I got someone in to clear the whole property so we can see the state of the condition of it now. It's still not a nice property, but it's not full of all the rubbish and all the junk that's in there. This is the bedrooms that you saw before, piled up with rubbish, and you can see that actually it's much clearer, much less cluttered, and you can see the property looks, you can see more about it. Now this property went into auction. I put it into auction, and as you can see, I put it in at a guide price of 125. With this property, I actually only needed 125 to make me profit. It made me, well, I'll tell you what the figures are at the end, how much it made me, but it made me some profit. It made me a little bit of profit. So I was aiming for that £15,000 profit mark. If it sold for 125 and 30, I was getting to that kind of figure. It actually sold at auction because people got into a bidding frenzy and they got all excited with each other and bidding against each other. And it actually sold for 139. So I was okay with 125. I actually made an extra, what's that, £14,000 more than what I really needed. So auctions can work both ways, either for you to put it in the auction or take it out of the auction. Okay, so there's a benefit to auctions, is basically what I'm saying. I've had a look and I think I've answered all the questions that have come in previously as I've been talking. Obviously, those of you that have registered questions or registered with me before, please, you know how to get in touch, drop us an email, let us know if there's questions that I haven't answered, happy to answer them for you. So I'm not going to go into a Q&A session right now. I think I've covered everything and there's not been any more coming while I've been talking. And I can't see the live feed, so I don't know if anybody on the live feed has asked questions or not, unfortunately. What I will tell you very briefly, so remember I said at the beginning, about 5 minutes, just to tell you about the programs that we offer here at ICANN and Clever Property Investing. And we've got 2 programs which you can jump on if you want to. If you don't have to, that's absolutely fine, no problem at all. We've got the 90-day buy-to-let system, which gives you everything you need to get going in your buy-to-let, very much more in depth than what I've been talking to you about today online, on the webinar. And you can see that you'll get a one-to-one kickstart with me, coaching session. You'll then get monthly group training sessions with me, mastermind groups as well. We've got a group of people that get together and help each other, and we do it. It's very powerful, the mastermind group. You've got access to the Facebook group and unlimited support and access to me and the team. And that's just a 90-day program, 3 months, and if you pay all up front, it's £2,500. Otherwise, you can go on to a payment plan. There's 2 options there. Or you can go on what we call the Professional Investor 12-month program. So that's a 12-month mentoring, coaching, and training program with me. You get all of that, plus you get weekly progress accountability, and you get a physical on-site 2 days with me somewhere in your investment area, wherever you want to go. So there's benefit there, but that's for a whole year. If it's of interest to you, get in touch. If not, if it's interest to somebody else that you know, then ask them to pass their details on to us and we'll get in touch. So hopefully that's been useful for you guys, and hopefully you've had a good session there, and I've given you some really good, clever little tips and proper information there that you can use going forward in your journey. Have a lovely rest of the day. Enjoy yourselves. Make sure you do it properly if you go forward, and you know how to get in touch if you want to. So it's lovely to see you all. Take care, and I will see some of you hopefully in the future.